On the nighttime of March 3, 1966, William Frawley, beloved as the grumpy Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, collapsed on Hollywood Boulevard and passed far away from a heart attack. Across town, Vivian Vance, his former co-famous person and longtime nemesis, was eating with friends whilst the information reached her. With a grin and a toast, she raised her glass and declared, "Champagne for absolutely everyone." It changed into a stunning reaction, even for those acquainted with their notorious feud. But why did their hatred run so deep? And what does their story screen about the real dynamics at the back of one in all television's maximum iconic duos? When you think about I Love Lucy, you likely don't forget the hilarious antics of Lucy and Ricky Ricardo. But there is no denying the magic of Fred and Ethel Mertz, their landlords and closest friends. Fred, played by using William Frawley, and Ethel, brought to existence by using Vivian Vance, had been principal to the show's fulfillment. Number 2. They bickered like an antique married couple and had a knack for making us snort, once in a while greater than Lucy and Ricky themselves. But off display, matters were not so rosy. In truth, William Frawley and Vivian Vance could not stand every other. To understand why, you've got to cross-returned to where all of it began, long before the brilliant lighting of TV. Let's start with William Frawley. He became born in 1887, so by the point he confirmed up on I Love Lucy, he turned into already 64 years vintage, and had an entire life of experience under his belt. Frawley started performing in vaudeville. The vintage time variety suggests that, featured everything from comedy to music and dance numbers. He had a knack for making people chortle, and he cherished the stage. By the 1920s, he became on Broadway, taking roles in huge productions like Mary Mary. He even ventured into drama in the 30s with 20th Century, proving he was extra than only a humorous man. Hollywood came calling soon after. Frawley seemed in some silent films in 1916, but he failed to pursue a movie career critically till the 30s. Once he did, he located regular work as a man or woman actor. If you have ever seen Miracle on 34th Street, you would possibly remember him as Judge Harper's political guide. That became Frawley, bringing his gruff charm to the screen. Over the years, he showed up in all types of movies: comedies, dramas, musicals, even westerns. He had a present for playing no-nonsense characters, whether or not it turned into a baseball manager in Alibi Ike or an insurance investigator in My Home in San Antone. But through 1951, Hollywood wasn't calling as a lot. Frawley had been in over 100 movies, but work changed into drying up. Then got here a lifeline, I Love Lucy. When Frawley heard that Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball were casting for a brand new sitcom, he jumped at the chance to play Fred Mertz, the cantankerous landlord. He referred to as Lucille Ball directly, a bold pass for someone she slightly knew, and asked for the component. Ball and Arnaz idea he'd become best, but CBS wasn't so positive. Frawley had a popularity for heavy consuming and being a bit unreliable. Arnaz gave him an ultimatum. One screw-up and he was out. Surprisingly, Frawley rose to the event. He in no way confirmed up inebriated, discovered his traces fast, and had become one of the maximum reliable forged participants. Now let's communicate about Vivian Vance, the woman who could grow to be his on-screen spouse, and his off-the-script nemesis. Born in 1909, Vance changed into 22 years younger than Frawley, and her course to stardom was special. She commenced in Broadway refrain strains in the 1930s, operating her way as much as helping roles. One of her big breaks got here when she understudied the legendary Ethel Merman in Anything Goes. Eventually, Vance landed a standout position in the musical Let's Face It, in which she danced along Danny Kaye and Eve Arden. She had a knack for comedy, and her making a song voice made her a herbal for musical theater. In the past-due 1940s, Vance moved to California, hoping to break into movies. She appeared in more than one movies, like The Secret Fury and The Blue Veil. However, her display screen career failed to take off. When the opportunity to audition for I Love Lucy came up, she became hesitant. She wasn't certain she desired to play a dowdy landlady, but Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball saw something in her. She nailed the audition, and Vivian Vance became Ethel Mertz. On display, Fred and Ethel Mertz had been the remaining extraordinary couple. Fred turned into miserly, grumpy, and once in a while downright rude, while Ethel became feisty and exact-hearted with just enough sass to preserve Fred in Take a Look At. Their chemistry was electric. They should fight one minute and group up for a hilarious scheme the subsequent. Fans cherished them. It had become smooth to believe they were an old married couple who had spent decades getting on each other's nerves. Off display screen, even though it was an exceptional story, the tension among Frawley and Vance was immediate. For starters, Vance became insulted by using the concept of being paired with a person 22 years older than her. She reportedly said he appeared greater like her father than her husband. Longrold, 32, was arrested for battery too. First-degree felony, battery felony. Frawley wasn't precisely the forgiving type, and while he overheard her remarks, he never allow it go. From that second on, their courting become icy at excellent. Frawley had his own gripes. He thought Vance become conceited and complained that she looked down on him. He referred to her as that woman and made snide comments about her behind her back. Meanwhile, Vance wasn't shy, approximately expressing her disdain. She skimmed scripts to look what number of scenes she had with that stubborn-headed little Irishman, and dreaded operating with him one-on-one. Despite their private animosity, Frawley and Vance had been consummate professionals. They confirmed up, hit their marks, and brought unforgettable performances. The audience by no means suspected a factor. In fact, their bickering and banter felt so actual due to the fact in many approaches, it became It's ironic that two folks who couldn't stand every different in real lifestyles became considered one of TV's maximum liked couples. Their working dating hit a turning factor while Desi Arnaz supplied them a spin-off show. The plan was to focus on Fred and Ethel without Lucy and Ricky. Frawley was all in. He saw greenback signs and failed to care approximately the tension with Vance. But Vance refused. She could not imagine spending more time with Frawley, let alone building an entire show around their dynamic. She felt the characters would not paintings without Lucy and Ricky, and he or she wasn't inclined to hazard it. Her selection killed the assignment and deepened the rift among them. By the time I Love Lucy ended, Vance and Frawley had been keen to go their separate approaches. Frawley moved directly to another sitcom, My Three Sons, wherein he performed a grandfatherly individual. Vance reunited with Lucille Ball on The Lucy Show. However, she insisted on a clause in her agreement that Frawley could in no way appear at the collection. Their feud became so extreme that even years later, they couldn't be within the equal room. But Frawley had. Frawley and Vance had spent years operating together, crafting one and all TV's maximum loved on display screen duos. However, their non-public disdain only grew extra extreme with time. By the time I Love Lucy wrapped, their hatred had reached its top, and neither had any hobby in pretending to tolerate the opposite any longer. Frawley, acknowledged for his gruffness and tendency to keep a grudge, carried his resentment of Vance wherever he went. Meanwhile, Vance wasn't exactly letting bygones be bygones both. On the set of his subsequent show, My Three Sons, Frawley failed to turn away from expressing his feelings about his former co-celebrity. Once, in the course of a visit from an excessive-ranking military officer, someone asked him what Vance was genuinely like. Without missing a beat, Frawley added his notorious insult, calling her a miserable C*T. It'd taken aback every person who heard it. But for folks who knew him properly, it became par for the route. Frawley wasn't one to mince phrases, and when it got here to Vance, his bitterness knew no bounds. Frawley's ire wasn't without some records of route. He had overheard Vance making disparaging comments about him at the set of I Love Lucy for the duration of their early years at the display. She had called him that vintage man, and expressed disbelief that audiences may want to ever buy them as a married couple. A seasoned vaudevillian and Hollywood veteran relied on his instincts and experience. He became known for tearing out the pages of scripts that failed to incorporate his traces, only bothering to research what he needed. Vance, however, came from a theater history, and took an extra methodical technique to her craft. She valued rehearsal, practice, and collaboration. All matters Frawley had little staying power for. Their clashing styles added another layer of friction to an already volatile dating. Then, there has been Frawley's reputation for drinking. Though he in no way permitted, intervened together with his paintings on I Love Lucy, his off-to-Zoom conduct became often unpredictable. He'd spend his evenings at nearby watering holes and had a reputation for being gruff and surly. Vance, who had battled her own non-public demons and struggled with intellectual fitness troubles earlier in her career, likely discovered Frawley's conduct onerous and unprofessional. In late April 1982, Frawley was arrested for making sexual encounters with several of his staffers and taken to jail with house members. Despite all of the hostility, there's no denying that Frawley and Vance created something unforgettable collectively. Their on-display dynamic changed into electric-powered, fueled-in component via the very actual anxiety among them. In many methods, their private dislike introduced authenticity to Fred and Ethel's bickering. Audiences believed they were an old married couple who had spent years getting underneath each other's skin because in a few ways they had been. Looking returned, it is nearly ironic that those who could not stand every different became such an iconic pair. Their performances on I Love Lucy helped define the show and left an indelible mark on TV records. But for Frawley and Vance, the fulfillment of the display wasn't sufficient to bridge the space between them. They carried their feud with them long after the final episode aired. And even in demise, their animosity remains a captivating, if bittersweet, footnote within the tale of I Love Lucy.